All right. Well, welcome to the Raise Rowdy podcast. I'm Nicky T.
I'm Chris Owen.
And we have a special guest. Well, now we are.
Yeah, now it started officially.
Yeah. And our special guest, Mr. Chris Owen.
How you guys doing?
Very blessed. How are you?
Doing pretty good. Thank you for having me.
Well, thanks for coming on. Well, let's talk first. Matt had you before us, and Kurt was very upset.
Yeah, I was like, let's get Chris on, and Nick was like, Matt already scheduled him.
Yeah.
It was like 2 days later that you asked me. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to be on Matt's podcast. And you're like, son of
Bro.
a...
It's funny, though, because, like, you know how you always say, well, I guess not everybody always says, but how they say, like, things are kind of in the ether and they're just meant to be. Well, you were meant to be on one of our podcasts.
Oh, there you go.
Now you're back.
Yes, I am back in your new digs here. This is awesome.
And you have a new job since then.
I do.
Yeah,
So-
you don't work for radio anymore, so now you can give us all the dirty secrets.
Yeah.
Most of them, at least.
Yeah, at least some. Yeah.
The rest will be on our Patreon.
Yeah.
All right,
little
I'm being a
Patreon.
degenerate. I'm having an alcohol drink today. Thank you, sir.
Me too. Blessings.
Cheers, bud.
We were almost
And-
out of these after festival.
There you go,
Yeah.
my Diet Coke.
Yeah. Dude, I had 2 of those earlier when I was on a call.
I just drank so much coffee today. I'm like, let's mellow this out a little bit.
Hey, not much better.
Oh, this has caffeine a little bit, probably, huh?
Just
Damn
a
it.
little.
Oh,
All right.
caffeine and vodka. There you go.
Classic combination.
It's a
Iced
great
tea.
mix.
Yeah,
Nothing better on a Wednesday.
true. What is it? 2:10?
Who?
Yeah, I mean, we're all working here or whatever.
True.
Well, man, so if you haven't listened to Matt's podcast with Chris, please go back and listen to it. It tells a lot of your story. But like we said, a lot has kind of changed for you.
It has.
So first of all, welcome to Nashville, Tennessee full time.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
Yay.
It's awesome. I know you'd been working on like trying to figure out your next move for a while. So super excited that it's here in Nashville.
Yeah, I mean, I'm super excited. I
Yeah.
say to my wife all the time, I can't believe we're here.
It's crazy.
Like, we're just
right?
driving around town and we see, the skyline. We're like, man, we live in Nashville now. How freaking cool is this?
It is. It's super nuts. I remember like when I moved to town, it was COVID, so it wasn't quite as. I don't know. It might have been better though, because like everyone was here just chilling. So kind of like might have been the best time ever to move for me.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when I moved like it was yesterday. I remember like my parents drove up with me, and like they left, and I was just sitting in my apartment by myself. I was like, "Here we go. Let's see if I can do this," kind of a thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like after all the hoopla of moving and getting a mattress and all that, and I was just 25 sitting in this 1-bedroom spot, Midtown, which was like totally different than it was now. But being like, I guess I'm gonna see if I can, make a living. I guess,
It really hit us on the drive down here. Like, I mean, it's great moving to Nashville, but somewhere in Ohio, I kind of look at my wife, and I think we're past Columbus at this point, and I'm like, man, there's no turning back right now. We're like halfway there, and we're off to the races here.
Where else have you lived?
Just Buffalo.
Yeah. So
Yeah. I mean, in different parts of Buffalo,
Yeah.
but only in the Buffalo area. Yeah. So
Crazy.
What about you, Nick? You've moved around for college, right?
Yeah. So I lived in Connellsville, Pennsylvania, which is about an hour south of Pittsburgh, and then I went to college like probably like a half hour southeast of Pittsburgh. So probably like a half hour from where I grew up, and then I lived in a few places around the Pittsburgh area, but mostly Pittsburgh. Literally my whole adult life until 2020, which, I mean, I was graduated high school in 2000, so you do the math. I was like 38, So first place I really lived any further than maybe an hour and a half away from where I was born.
I
And
love Pittsburgh. So
Me too.
Same.
So my in-laws, they're all Pittsburgh Steelers fans, like
Oh, yeah.
huge Pittsburgh Steelers fans, even
Yeah.
though they're not really from Pittsburgh. They're from
Yeah.
the Rochester area. But so I'm like, wow, you're all Steelers fans. I thought it was just my wife and her parents. It's like the entire family that I married into.
Yeah.
Like Steelers, everything in their house. So
My family is pretty crazy. Like my cousin Richard that lives in California, he has an entire bedroom that's just full of Pittsburgh Steelers and Pirates stuff, like all over all the walls.
probably
It's
has all
wild.
the Super Bowl championship
Oh,
stuff.
yeah.
Just
Yeah.
living in the 70s still.
Yep. It's wild.
Relatable as a Dolphins fan.
Yeah, it's. I mean, Pittsburgh is definitely a sports culture, but it has a really good country music scene too. So we have a lot of like smaller clubs there. Kurt, first time I met Kurt, actually, was it Jurgles?
Yeah.
Gerbils.
Yeah. Just a little club that used to, I think, be a skating rink or like a gym. I'm not sure.
Strip club.
One of those two.
Oh, was it a standing room only kind of place?
No, there were seats.
Okay.
So, but the main area, like the front. Have you been to the Dusty Armadillo?
No, but I've heard. I definitely want to go. It's on the bucket list.
It's great.
Yeah.
It's just an awesome, crappy honky tonk. It's awesome. But like the center, I compare to the Dusty Armadillo, and then there's seating to the right that's slightly raised up, and then there's a whole upper balcony that kind of looks over. So there's like private seating back there in the back where you can like kind of rent the space. But I would say it's maybe like a 500 cap. Maybe slightly less.
I love those
depending
kind
on
of
the venue.
venues.
Me too.
Love it. Yeah.
'Cause
All
you
the
can
energy
get
in the
up
world.
front. Yeah.
Exactly.
The whole place, if you have it even 3/4 full, it's so much energy. And I got to see so many great shows there. We had 3 country radio stations in Pittsburgh. So we had Y108, which is the one that I like kind of grew up on. That's what my dad was playing my whole life while trying to drown us out so he could go to sleep during shift work, you know? And then Big 104.7, which is
that one I know. Yep.
Yep. And then there's a one that is kind of like considered the most local, which is a Froggy station.
And that one I know too. Yeah.
So we had all 3 of those. So, man, if you were listening to country radio and you didn't like the song that was on one station, you could probably find something else that you did like, you know?
Yeah. Well, I guess since we're kind of talking about country radio, we'll talk about who Chris is and why we're having him on here. I think that'd be kind of a fun thing. I know Chris just from, I guess, I meant like we hang, in person now, but it was like just from the internet. I always enjoyed you kind of being the statistics guy at country radio and telling us all about that. And I really enjoy following you. I think it's just, if you don't follow Chris Owen, you absolutely should, especially if you're a country music fan. But you kind of got your start in the music industry starting in country radio.
Yeah. So, I mean, I was doing the Twitter stuff where I was talking about country music a lot before I started working in radio. Mm-hmm. And I kind of just did that for fun. Mm-hmm. And I didn't really try to make any kind of connections in the music industry or radio or really any of that stuff. I just did it because I like to do it. Mm-hmm. And then people started following me from Nashville, and it just kind of grew. And then I got hired in radio and kind of worked my way up there. And I think it took probably a good 4 or 5 years. And then I had all these like friendships, or I had all these networking opportunities just because of what I did on Twitter, and then now what I'm doing on Instagram too. So yeah.
Which is like not even that long of a time, 4 or 5 years to go from someone not in the industry to being like the assistant PD of a radio station. It's like, that's extremely quick in my opinion, right? It's not like you went to Belmont like people do or anything like that.
No, so I've lived in town for 3 months now, but I was coming to town for about a year and a half, 2 years, maybe like every month or two. But, that's always the one thing I'm like, man, like everybody goes to Belmont that goes into the music industry, or at least most people do, or they go to MTSU or they go to Lipscomb or something like that. It's like, I didn't do any of that stuff. So it's kind of like, man, I'm north of 30. I'm from Buffalo and radio. I'm like the outlier here in terms of like trying to like do the music industry thing now. So
that's kind of how I felt too. Like when I worked over at Big Loud, I was like, okay, so I don't know any of these terms you guys are talking about. I learned them quickly, but I was like, I don't know. I'm like, what are you talking about? Yeah, I knew some of them, but it's a totally different lingo. And I was the same way. I was like, I didn't move here till I was 38, so.
I mean, there's a lot of different lingo in publishing and with labels, but I mean, it's the same thing in radio. Like, there's a lot of stuff that radio people say because they're so used to it, and they forget that most people don't know what this stuff means. Like, we call commercial spots, just have a spot block. Yep. And I always call commercial spots now, even though most people view them as commercials, but we just call them spots, so, it's like stuff like that you just got to work out of your vocabulary, but it's all of this muscle memory. Yeah, just all the stuff that you learned in radio. So
totally makes sense. And we had a radio show for a minute. I had a radio show back in Pittsburgh on Y108, and when I moved down here, Kurt started co-hosting it with me, and then he saw how much work it was. Because we came from the world of not knowing how to make a radio show and trying to, so we were just like in audition messing around.
Man, I wish radio could just be you walk in and talk for 3 or 4 hours and leave, and it is nothing like that.
No,
like the real radio
could be like that.
Same.
Yeah. You do promotion meetings and sales meetings and on-air talent meetings, and you go to like different remotes and stuff like that, have programming meetings, and you write stuff for the websites. And then by the end of the day, you're like, oh yeah, I'm in radio. I have to talk on my show and stuff like that. And then you just got to do it again the next day. So yeah.
It's crazy. That's what people don't understand. When someone's on the radio for 3 hours, that doesn't mean they're working a 3-hour day, or a 4-hour day. Yeah. That means they're working a 10-hour day to prep for that 3-hour show.
And sometimes longer if you just start in radio.
Absolutely.
I mean, I did a lot of double and triple shifts when I first started in radio because I'm like, hey, I'm glad to be here. Let's, like, what do you want me to do? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, sure, I'll do that and that and that. I'll just say yes to everything.
Yep.
So,
but that's how you learn, really. Like, in my opinion, the wider base you have, the easier it is to move up. So the more you know when someone else is messing it up.
If you're a one-trick pony, you're not going to last long. And if you don't love it and you're a one-trick pony, you're just going to get chewed up.
Spit out.
That's so true for that, but also for most industries, I feel like.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's kind of how I built my career on, is being able to do a bunch of different things. It's like play different instruments or wear different hats, like in the business world.
Yep.
That's interesting, man. I'm kind of curious as to how the radio industry has changed even since you started 4 or 5 years ago to now.
It's, I mean, I think the past 10 years, we've seen a ton of changes in radio, how stations are programmed, how people view radio maybe. There's been a saying for a while now that radio is dying or is dead, or who listens to the radio anymore. We have a lot of data that says like millions and millions of people listen to the radio.
Right.
And this entire town and, songwriters get paid based on radio airplay.
Right.
And, we've seen radio create stars still.
Yes.
It's a lot different now. Obviously, you have streaming and all these other platforms where, certain artists can be big without radio. But still, there's a lot of artists that do need radio to, exactly. Like Zach Bryan, but there's a lot of artists that still do need radio. And, it's funny seeing everything with radio back when I first started listening to the radio, like 20 years ago, 25 years ago, where a lot of stations would pick the music and they could pick whatever they wanted to. Now it's all corporate programmed, and it all just gets funneled down to each station they own, and they just play what the corporate log tells them to play. And I think a lot of people still don't understand that or like know that's even going on. So, and that's really taken shape in the past 10 to 15 years.
So that's like iHeart stations or
Town Square or Cumulus or Odyssey or any of these.
Yeah.
So let's say, how many radio stations are reporting in the U.S.?
158, I think, right now.
Okay.
On the media-based panel.
Yeah. And I guess, and what percentage of those are part of some big conglomerate?
Oh, it's well over half, at least. Like, it's probably closer to 75%,
Yeah.
So, 25% of radio stations are iHeart, and 20% are Cumulus, and then
iHeart is a big chunk. They're definitely the biggest one.
Yeah.
Then it goes to Odyssey, then Cumulus.
Okay.
Then there's other companies and Town Squares, and one of them, which is the company that I worked at. So
when artists do radio tour, do they go to different iHeart stations?
Yes.
Yeah, they'll go to anything. Like,
absolutely.
Well, why?
So a radio tour is basically just trying to make connections now. Just make connections, make friendships with radio people. The days of you going on a radio tour for 12 weeks, and if they like you, they'll add the song and play it 25 times next week. Those days are gone.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because everything's corporate program now. And I think since COVID, labels have taken a different approach to doing a radio tour. It's not traditional, 12 weeks. There's a lot of people that would just do, like, they get signed, they get discovered in a bar, because the label liked them, and then 6 months later, they get put out on this 12-week radio tour.
Right.
And then, we'll see if it works. And there was no social media. And
It's like the Tim McGraw route.
Yeah. Like, literally. And Tim had an entire album that didn't do anything for him.
Right.
His highest peaking single, I think, was Welcome to the Club. It didn't even get to the top 30. So.
I don't know if I've even heard that song.
Welcome to the Club. Yeah. That was, I think, his second single. But, 31 on radio and records. I remember that.
Dang. So I guess, so now it's just all about meeting. But what's the point of if you're an artist, you want your song on the radio, so you go around and meet program directors, and program directors aren't programming necessarily.
They're helping. There's a lot of programmers that have been in radio for a long time, back even when they used to program stations themselves. So, they still do a lot in terms of the radio station where, they'll be part of the booking process, trying to get artists to come play their shows. and stuff like that, and they'll be part of certain kind of live broadcasts and sales meetings and stuff like that, and they'll be part of programming meetings too and talk with the corporate programmers, but like they're not just having the entire playlist be picked by them, so which
this is stuff I've always wondered, and this I kind of wanted to do this podcast because like this is stuff I don't know, even though I've done radio tour with multiple artists. And
radio tours are tough, man. They're grueling on an artist. I could not do it.
It's a grind for sure.
Yeah.
It depends on what stage you're in too. When Luke did his radio tour, I wasn't even playing in the band. It was kind of like it was him and Rob where they were doing the 5 a.m. flights and playing in the boardrooms. The radio tour I was doing was like playing acoustic shows, like with audiences.
8-man jam.
Yeah, like 8-man jam and stuff like that. With like Jana is my first ones doing that, and with Michael Ray also, and then some with Luke also. But it wasn't like in the boardrooms. It was kind of like, his stuff was already popping, and we're just kind of playing like in New Jersey at some random club,
Yeah.
And those are fun because it's like people are drinking, and there's like a stage and a PA. It's not like in a boardroom.
Yeah.
Stuff. I mean, I have done that too before with Michael, but it's just like.
See, when you go on a radio tour, like for me and what we did, the years that I was at the station I was at in Buffalo, instead of having the artist come to our actual office and play for a few radio people, let's take you out to a bar and have an actual show for people and make it a radio tour stop as well.
Yeah.
Because the whole point is to meet listeners and fans.
Right.
And you can meet us in the process too. Is basically the way we approach it instead of you just coming to the radio station, playing a couple songs acoustically and leaving, which to me does nothing for you almost. So
yeah, I think that's a better option. And the Pittsburgh radio stations did a pretty good job of that, or they would have a live audience for some of those shows where they would be in studio. But the ones where it's like, hey, come out. Like first time I saw Luke was at a radio show in December in Pennsylvania with Rob, and they just played a Tuesday night, I think, for free. Like
Yep.
It was just free at Jurgles, because they were like, hey, instead of coming here, why don't we just have you play at the bar?
yeah.
And it wasn't like it was extremely well attended, but even if you're in front of 75 people, that's better than being in front of 5 at the studio.
Yeah, for sure.
It was long before I started working at the radio station, but I think it was like 2013. It was when Chris Stapleton had What Are You Listening To out.
Yeah.
And they did a radio tour stop at like this local pizzeria bar place in Buffalo called Santora's. And I think like 10 people showed up for Chris Stapleton.
Yeah.
And then 4 years later, he's the biggest thing in music.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, CMA Awards or whatever that
Yeah.
was.
Yeah, Justin Timberlake.
Ooh, poor guy.
Yeah.
Or I should say dumbass, just got a DUI, but that's not this podcast, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I've always been kind of curious about that. And I think we have a lot of people that tune into the show that are musicians and artists and stuff like that. So it's kind of cool to get radio's perspective. I'm always thinking like being in their shoes. What do I do for my career? What's the best? Because like when we had Lainey on, she was saying like she got her deal and then COVID happened, so she did virtual like radio tour where she got to meet everyone via Zoom, and so people weren't mad that she wasn't coming to visit because it was COVID, but she didn't have to fly or anything. She just could just do it from her house or from the label or whatever, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing that's interesting is like some people get record deals and they don't even do radio tour
Yeah.
now. So it's like, or like Colby's not even going to radio.
Yeah.
Like, so.
There's a lot of artists that are signing deals that say, don't send me to radio. Like Charles is like that, or at least it was talked about when I was over at Big Loud.
Labels don't make any money from radio
Yeah.
either. Like they make it off streaming and
Yeah.
masters and other stuff like that. So, I mean, it's kind of crazy to think about. 20 years ago, we were in a place with no streaming, and we had only had iTunes for like a year or two, maybe.
Yeah.
And it was all radio.
Yep.
That's what you did. Now it's like a completely different ballgame, and labels know that they have to compete with streaming and all these other things. And artists, if they have the audience, streaming numbers, and they can sell tickets on their own, and they have a manager and stuff like that, they don't need you. So how do you work this contract to make an artist want to sign with you and make it help them and make it help you? So
Yeah, I mean, it totally makes sense. It's a different world, and specifically because The one thing that I will say that I learned about working at a record label is that they have all of the phone numbers of the people whose doors need to be opened for stuff to work.
Yeah.
Right? Doesn't mean they're going to love the song, doesn't mean they're going to say yes every time, but they know everyone that they have to call to make it work. If it works or not, it's a different thing. But
it's all about connections in radio. And
it really is.
It really is no different than Nashville when you think
And
about it.
management, too.
Yeah. Like management and publishing and, labels. How many people do you know? How many relationships do you have? How many are actually a relationship where you look at them as a friend instead of just like a business connection?
Yeah.
It's a lot of that in radio, just like Nashville in the music industry. So
totally makes sense. So we had an editorial, like a truly editorial show. What our programming was song from artist that is on radio on that station, and then whatever we wanted next. Then song of like known artist. And then by the end of it, it was like we could kind of play whatever we wanted. How much do you think that exists in terrestrial radio now?
Oh, in terms of just like being able to play what you want?
Yeah.
I mean, there are certain shows, if you're like a morning show, and let's say you're an honor personality that's been around for 20, 30 years, you might have a little leeway to work songs in that you want to play on your show. So that kind of stuff can happen. If it's like a midday show or like a syndicated show, they're not picking any of the music. I mean, I had a specialty show. I was lucky enough to have it every Saturday morning for 2 years called Wide Open Country. So I would keep all the current singles in there, but other than that, I can play whatever I want to from the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, stuff like that. But those are
today.
And today. Those are few and far between, though.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Nowadays,
I assumed that to be the case, but I didn't have enough experience to know.
Hey, what do you think the weirdest song was that we played on the radio?
Was it a country song?
Yeah.
I mean, the only songs that Mark was like, hey, could you not do that again, was the ones that were like 6 minutes long.
Or I know we played "Dust in a Baggie" by Billy Strings. I think
we definitely played songs that
like
referenced cocaine on the radio, which I think is okay. What's your opinion on that?
Jamie Johnson, I think, did it one time, so it's fine.
Yeah, if Jamie did it, it's fine.
Eric Clapton. We would also play like clips from the podcast, like audio, like us jamming.
Yeah, we would play songs that we had recorded on the podcast or that we recorded at those Mule House shows.
Yeah, like live acoustic stuff.
Yeah, which was kind of awesome.
That was fun, man.
Yeah,
I do kind of miss it a little bit now.
Yeah, we talked about like kind of getting another radio show, but
it's the perfect time.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, but at the same time, I'd want it to be like that. I'd want it to be editorial.
Yeah.
What do you think about these non-traditional radio shows, stuff like what Ward's doing on Apple Music or what like is happening on TuneIn?
I love it.
Are those like, are you think that they will have traction like general radio does? Because like in my head, one of the things that drives radio is when you hop in your car, the radio turns on to the station you were last on if you were listening to radio. So in my head, that would be what you'd need for something like that to like work.
It's convenient to just hop in your car. I mean, especially if you're busy and you have a busy schedule.
Yeah.
Like you have a 15-minute drive. Instead of like trying to hook in your phone or trying to get this podcast up or something like that, hey, just turn on the radio.
Yeah.
There's still millions of people who do that. And I think that's how radio still makes money, is because people are so busy. It's easy just to jump in your car or truck and just turn on like whatever you had playing last.
Yeah. I talk about that too. I say like to my friends and people that are in the industry, I'm like, we're not the normal consumer. No. The normal radio consumer is someone that is driving to the grocery store and has 2 kids in the back and just wants something to kind of appease themselves and the kids in the back, They
want something too that, they won't change the channel on.
Yes.
And so you get all the research and like having that help a song work its way up the chart now and other factors like that where, it's kind of, hey, this song, maybe it's not streaming like a Zach Bryan or Luke Combs or Morgan Wallen or something like that, but it's a good enough streaming and people are researching the heck out of it where it's like, man, they don't change the station when the song comes on, or at least we have data that we think that is what's going on when we play this song. Yeah. So that's how songs are able to work their way up the chart, or at least some of them. And I mean, I always tell people in Nashville now, it's like we're so consumed by the music, so consumed by the music industry and just, all the song pitching, all of the song meetings, and all of this other stuff with A&R. Listen to the radio once in a while. Just listen to it for like an hour. Listen to what they play at the start of the hour. Listen to what they play at the end of the hour. What do they go into commercial breaks saying? Stuff like that. Just see, because it really isn't, like groundbreaking stuff that radio does play. They play a lot of tempos. I think I counted, like last week, 32 of the top 50 right now are tempos at radio. Yeah. Even though a lot of what's working in terms of streaming, are ballads and mid-tempos. Like Morgan Wallen and Bailey Zimmerman love a good, sad, mid-tempo kind of song. And I think that's what a lot of the town is writing right now, even though it's like, guys, over half the chart is still tempos.
Yeah.
It's like,
It's so true. And if you're thinking about what a song is going to be like a hit that you'll look back on and be a generational song, it could be any of that. But if you're looking for what's going to make you generate revenue and keep your publishing deal, it's still that stuff that sounds like a radio hook and sounds like a song that you're not going to change when it turns on.
And you look at certain artists and they're having a great career, like right now at radio, releasing what some people might consider the same song over and over again, but it works.
Yeah.
And it makes them money. It makes writers and publishers money, and radio likes it because, the songs are researching good.
Yeah.
So why change? You know, and there's a lot of artists still that I think are in that groove right now, when it comes to radio. So, it's changing, obviously, but.
Right.
And also, like, the fans are like, if you change and they don't like it, then they are mad,
Yeah.
But then if you don't change, they're mad.
Yeah, it's like, when Brad Paisley did his Wheelhouse record, it's like, man, there were a lot of, people saying that he had to change it up, and he changes it up. And people are like, no, that's not good. Go back to the old stuff. And then if the artist stays in that old stuff too long, it's like, man, got to change it up. It's like, be damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of thing.
Doubt. The problem of being successful,
Yeah.
But then you just got to do like the clear Coke and then go back to classic Coke kind of a thing. I'm pulling up Media Base here. I'm just kind of going down some of these songs, and we'll see. I'm not super familiar with all these, but we'll see if there's a lot of tempo on here. If that's the case, then I'm going to start writing some bangers here. Take Her Home, Kenny Chesney.
It's like a mid-tempo.
Yeah. The Post and Morgan Tune.
That's an up-tempo. That song's a smash.
Dude.
It's so catchy.
Yeah. Ashley Cook, Your Place.
That's a mid-tempo.
So all right. No capital. It's like a lowercase thing.
Yeah, it's like
That's
a style. It's
yeah.
like a stylistic choice. I think Kelsey Ballerini.
I
is
saw
still
that.
doing that.
I saw Ella do that. Yeah.
Some do the all capital letters.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like the Hicks tapes, all caps.
Yeah. So I guess it.
Why not use every avenue to be creative?
Yeah. Well, I think what you're really just trying to do is make it stick out.
Exactly.
When you see it.
Yes.
And we got Bailey Zimmerman, Where It Ends.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tempo.
Whoever played on that song did a great job. The Jelly Tune.
Mm-hmm.
Halfway to Hell.
Yeah.
Jelly's bread and butter are those ballads.
Yeah.
He just released another one too. That's going to be a big hit.
Mm-hmm.
But he every now and then
like
you need
Save Me or whatever.
Yeah, you need a tempo for your live show, and Halfway to Hell is such a jam, and it's still like talking about something a lot of people can relate to.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
I'm just gonna go through a couple more of these. I'm not gonna read all 40.
Go through all of them.
Cowgirls.
Cowgirl.
Yeah.
That's a tempo too.
Brian Martin tune.
That's a tempo.
Yeah.
Remember we did that live pod with him?
Yeah.
That was cool.
Dude, we had Brad Martin play the Rusty Nail when his song was like 7 on radio for McElwain Monday, and I'm like, this is amazing.
The Aldine song.
Let Your Boys Be Country.
Yeah.
That's tempo-ish.
Yeah, it's like
mid-tempo.
medium, Bulletproof.
That's a tempo.
Yeah, that's a rockin' tune. This Chris, I haven't heard this Chris Young song.
That's a tempo. It's an interpolation of the David Bowie song, Rebel Rebel.
Okay. Another one of those.
It's like, I'll take your word for it.
All right.
Yeah.
Why do you think there's so many interpolations happening right now?
Because it's working.
Yeah.
Flat out. Like, I know in town people are talking about, like another interpolation song. Chris Young's is working. The new Dustin Lynch song, Chevrolet, which is an interpolation of Drift Away. That's working. It's working great, in fact.
Yeah.
So as long as they keep working, I think you're going to get them at least every now and then.
Oh, is it like, and Drift Away?
It's the same exact melody. Yeah.
Chevrolet. Okay. That's funny. I like that.
Yeah, it's interesting.
You did there, Dustin.
In your Chevrolet.
Yeah. It's interesting to see that work. We're talking about radio a good bit, but like what in your new role, like what are you actually doing at the publisher? Like what's your day-to-day?
So I pitch songs that get written either have just been turned in or, God willing, a song gets cut from a catalog from 5-10 years ago.
Yeah.
And I'm also helping out with calendars, so we have 8 writers right now, I think 8 or 9. So we help, I help Nate Lowry, who's the VP of Cornman Music, book calendars.
Yep.
And we have a relationship with Warner Chappell. So they help out a lot, including Jessie Vaughn, who is a rock star, and she helps us, with Lydia Vaughn's calendar, Graham Bundy, or Graham Barham, and Will Bundy, and then Brett James obviously owns it.
Yeah.
So
That's super
You
cool.
got to be happy as a pick and slop over there doing that. I just feel like that would be like a dream job for you.
it's really cool to just listen to songs and try to pitch them.
Yeah.
80 to 90% of the time, it's going to be a no.
Yeah.
Or it's going to be a copy.
Yeah.
And not even a hold. And a hold is not a guarantee the song's going to get cut either.
Right.
And even getting a song cut, it's not a guarantee it's going to be released or make the album. So
Right.
there's a lot of hurdles I'm learning to go through to get a song cut and out there and to actually make us money and the writer money. But it beats almost any job out there. It's great. Yeah.
So is it kind of like a sales job in a way?
Literally, yeah. My old boss in radio told me, he's like, almost every job has at least a little bit of sales in it. So if you're trying to avoid sales, it's
That sounds like a Nicky T saying.
So true. Everyone is. Everything sales if you think about it. Like talking someone into being your friend is sales.
everything sales.
Yeah. your wife, you had to sell her on that you're a good person and that you're the person that's right for her. It's all everything sales.
It's like we play these big shows and we practice this music, and Luke pours his heart out into these songs, and it's about his family and his wife that he loves and all this and that, and then where the money comes from, like selling T-shirts and beer.
Yeah. It's so crazy.
Yeah.
And what skills do you think that you took from your time in radio that are helping you with your current position?
I think just knowing how radio works, how those meetings in radio circles work, like why they would play a song, what songs are hopefully going to work at radio, and stuff like that. And maybe who do I think is going to work at radio? Like when I'm trying to book rights for people. Obviously we have to the writer and the artist and really dive with the music. But who do we think is going to be the best fit? Who do we think is going to work at radio? Can this tangibly, I don't even know if that's a word, make money for us?
Yeah.
If the answer is no and you don't think it's going to be, then it's probably not worth doing.
Yeah.
I'm very much the mindset there's got to be a reason to do something. Can this help the writer make money? Can it help us make money? Will it better their career?
Yeah.
If the answer is no and we're just spinning our wheels, then why do it is kind of where I stand on that. So
That totally makes sense. And honestly, that's good to hear too, because that's strategy behind not just doing, right? Not just doing because you think the song's good and it should have ears. It's like, why am I pitching this specific song? What's the direction we're trying to push forward? That's cool.
Yeah, and just to clarify a little bit for our civilian listeners, just to take a step back, because I'm about to go in a little bit more. But so you work for Cornman Publishing.
Yep.
And so, which is Brett James's.
Brett James owns it. Yep.
So what do publishers do? Just so my parents know, because they don't have.
I still try to explain to my parents what I do, and
Yeah.
I still don't understand quite. I don't think my wife understands, to be honest with you. But so basically, as a publisher, you have writers that are signed.
Okay.
So there's the big corporate ones like Sony and Warner and Universal, and then there's smaller boutique ones like what we are. But we have a relationship with Warner Chappell. They do our admin, and there's a lot of other publishers that have the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
So basically what you do is you have writers, you book their calendars with other writers around town or artists or producers even, and then they write songs, they turn it in, and then you basically try to get them cut. As long as you like the song and you think it's a good enough song to get cut.
So Cornman has 10 songwriters-ish?
About 8 or 9.
Yeah. And so they, you guys, give them a stipend to live, money-wise, right?
Brett does that. I don't do
Yeah.
that.
Well, I know you don't do that, but yeah. And then, then these guys are able to, instead of going to work at Chewy's, they can write songs.
They could do both if they want to, but yeah.
Right. They don't have to work at Chewy's. And
They don't have to work as many hours. Yeah.
And to
Chewy's,
get right? And to get a song cut means to have an artist, someone to have the song cut is to have it recorded, essentially.
Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly.
I'm just trying to be a little clearer because sometimes you guys are talking about lingo, and I realize that I speak in it all the time without knowing what it is. So if you're listening and you're not in the industry, it might be a little confusing.
You're just so used to saying it that it has become second nature to say stuff like that.
And a lot of this stuff, even for me, is still confusing,
Yeah.
But so now you're pitching songs, which is like so cool. So let's say you get an email, so and so needs a song. Ken Chesney has a record coming up or something. He's looking for songs. So you listen to, you go through your catalog, and you're like, oh, this song could be great for Kenny, or this would be, or maybe you hear a song like this would be good for Luke Bryan. So you get on the horn and call the Peach Pickers or whoever, and like pitch the song to him that way, or.
That's essentially what I do. Like, to be completely honest, you pretty much nailed it. Yeah, there you go. When I like hear a song that I think is going to work for so and so, you learn who best to send that song to. I mean, if you know the artist, obviously the best thing is just to text it to the artist.
Yeah,
that's the easiest way to do it. But sometimes it's not through the label; it's through a producer, it's through a management company. It's through a friend even, or it's through even another publisher or something if they manage, let's say, an artist or something like that. So you just got to learn, like, who's the best person or people to pitch a song to if you really think that this song that you have is going to work for, like, whoever the artist is.
So if you're working in publishing, you have to know what's going on in the industry as far as talent goes. Like, you have to know who's already big, but you also have to know who's on the up.
Yeah, you can't just worry about your writers. You have to worry about everybody because you're going to be like, will they work with my writers?
Yeah.
Will this artist work if I pitch a song to them? Are they going to even work at radio? You have to like weigh all these factors into the job, which can make it really challenging and really time consuming.
Yeah.
How
much are you guys like leveraging data about like artists on who you're pitching to? Because I know like at Big Loud it was even more. I knew it was, but it was even like more than I thought it was. So like in terms of like, is this artist growing? Are they moving towards like upscaling where we think they're gonna pop and have their next album?
You always
really
want to be
produce?
growing. Like you never want to stay stagnant or God forbid decrease. So
thank you. Yeah, are you guys using a lot of data points to track artists, not just your writers and things like that?
I mean, I do.
Yeah.
I love using data for almost anything in life. I don't only use data.
Yeah.
I still use a lot of intuition.
For sure.
There's a balance to it.
Yeah.
But I know labels, like they use all the data points like crazy, and they have all this stuff that gives you all the analytics for streaming and radio and all this other stuff that they see every single day and goes into their decision making. And I would love to like have a little bit of that in the publishing world. Obviously it's still, what makes a great song.
Yeah.
Like it's got a great melody, it's got a great hook, it's got great lyrics, and you feel something when you hear it.
Yeah.
And there's nothing better than hearing a song for the first time and you just flip out and you pitch it and it gets cut. Like, I mean, I've heard those stories all the time. That's still the number one most important thing. But having data be at least a little bit of the day-to-day process, I think is going to help everybody out.
For sure.
And to make, each thing you do more narrow in terms of what the goal is, which I think is going to, have your time be better spent instead of not knowing whether something's going to work and kind of just throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks.
Yeah, that totally makes sense.
This is something I've always wondered, and because I hear the term like data a lot. What is data? I mean, I know like what the word means, but like where are people getting this data from? Because as someone who is, I'm in the industry, like I'm a musical performer. I don't have like an Excel spreadsheet of like so I can go on Spotify and see streams, but like there's like secret industry data that like labels have or something, or
for
what?
sure.
There's so much more to it than just looking on Spotify and seeing like, oh, this song has 25 million streams. Well, if it's been out 4 years, it isn't as impressive. Right. So you gotta see like, how many streams is it averaging per day? What's the growth rate for it? How many of those streams are playlist streams? And what's the growth on that? Or like all this stuff that they put into these.
Keep going, please. It's interesting. This is so much fun for me because I'm like, I don't know any of this stuff.
Well, and then it's how is it doing compared to other stuff with people that have similar bases? So if an artist has 100,000 monthly listeners and they have 10 other comps that all have similar things, are they growing at a faster rate, or is one song popping that's making all of their catalog push?
Yes.
Right? So they're always looking for the anomalies. But one of the things you'll see, hey, we start tracking this artist, and one song, okay, it plateaued. Well, that didn't plateau long enough in, so it's not going to go as far as we want it to go, right? If it keeps going up and then it plateaus and then it rises again and then it plateaus and then it rises again, okay, you probably have something on your hand that's like considered quote unquote really viral.
Yeah,
right?
that's kind of what is going on with the Tyler Braden song.
Yeah.
Devil You Know. That's growing in streams.
Oh, great.
So-
Love it. Love Tyler.
Like normally, you know, you have a song, like let's say it gets released and it has like a huge like weekend for streaming when it comes out. Especially if you're a new artist, it's very natural, especially if you're not getting the radio airplay you want, to start to decrease and decrease. You don't want that. You want something that's growing and
Yep.
growing and growing. So that's what the Tyler Braden single's doing. That's something you look at. I would love to get, and I'm sure they do it at Big Loud and Warner, to get like one unified number
Yeah.
for stuff. Put all the data points in and
Yeah.
see exactly how well it's streaming compared to everybody else, instead of having all these numbers to look at and to try
Yeah.
to like sort them out.
Yeah, what I've seen is, and not just at Big Loud, but is like a rolled up score, right? And it has different factors that company deemed to be important towards the success of the record and the song. And they put all of those together and kind of combine in a score per song, and then rolled up to the artist for all of their streaming songs, all of their last project. But I remember like hearing things about, hey, we put all of our songs into this database, not only so it's easy to sort, but you can say, I'm looking for mid-tempo. I'm looking for this. Also, I've heard things where it's like, hey, when does the chorus kick in?
Yeah, if it takes over a minute to get to the chorus, we have a problem.
Yeah. But if it's in this window, that's the highest success rate, right? So it doesn't mean it's necessarily a great song or a bad song.
They're outliers all
Yeah.
over the place. So, you know, just because this worked for this artist and this song doesn't mean it's going to work for you. I think a lot of people take it the wrong way, that kind
Yeah.
of data, where it's like, well, you know, how about them? You know, like it worked for them. Why can't it work for me? Well, like you can't expect it to work for you just because it worked for somebody else. That's not
Yeah.
really how this works.
And the more data you have in it, the better. So, I mean, in terms of like a publisher, if you're Sony and you have all of your Sony songs that you've cut forever, and you can put them in there and say, okay, look at the last 2 years. Okay, look at the last 6 months. Or, hey, let's look at the all-time smashes, right? You can kind of have all of those as separate data points.
but who's compiling this data? And
Seth England's brother at Big Loud. For real. Like Eric.
so does each label have their own
Data team. Absolutely.
Yeah, yes.
So, but there's not like a media base for data.
There is. There's an app, I forget what it's called, but it's like an algorithm
Yes.
that you put songs into, and it basically pops out a score.
Okay, so you put in "Live Like You're Dying,"
Yeah.
and it gives it like a 99.
Well, since that already has data behind it in terms of how it did, that has how similar is this new song to Live Like You Were Dying.
Yeah.
So
Right.
okay, but so if I am an artist, which I'm not, but if I was, and I wanted to geek out on my own stats, what are my resources?
I forget what the
Call Seth England's brother.
Yeah, that's
call
another-
Eric. He's a G.
We don't have an Eric. But I mean, if you're an artist, you can always ask the label, and
Yeah.
they'll give you all the data they can.
Yeah.
If you're just a fan or something,
Or
you're
if
not
I'm
getting
unsigned.
that data. Yeah,
Well,
you're not getting. You know,
It's build your own data points. So it's, for example, like if you put a song out on YouTube and it gets X amount of streams in your first 3 weeks, right? Well, okay, what if you put $1,000 behind it? What do the regular people that saw it that are already your fans think? And then what do these new fans think, right? Then that might be a radio single. If you're sending it to new fans and it has a great hit rate of consumption when you're feeding it to people that never heard Larry Fleet before, then that might be a song that you might want to put up to radio or make your feature single, you know?
or to be the focus track or something
Exactly.
like that. I mean, there's a lot of singles picked nowadays because of data.
Yeah.
And that, like, because you want to eliminate as much risk as humanly possible if you're the label, because you're going to spend all this money on it
Yeah.
trying to promote the radio. 20 years ago, you would literally, how would you pick a single?
Your gut.
Like, what does the label think about it, or the artist if they're big enough?
Yep.
What is some radio people telling me?
Yep.
What's the reaction when I play it live at a crowd? That's like all you had to go on to pick singles for radio.
Yeah. yeah, what is sonically does this sound like, right? But now there's so many different data points. It's how fast did this pop up when it had the viral moment on TikTok? Or, okay, now that it is live streaming, what is it doing, right? Because the song that you make the focus track after 6 weeks of the album being out might not be the song that's producing the best. So do you say, okay, now we want to make a music video for that song to see if it can make that pop? Or, like, for example, I remember an artist having a song that did extremely well on Facebook, because that's a different demo than TikTok. So there was a song about the Lord, and that did incredibly well on Facebook, but it didn't pop as much on TikTok and Instagram. So it's like, okay, maybe that's the consumer base that we are talking about possibly being the radio consumer base. Will that work?
Yep, 25 to 54-year-olds
Yeah.
for radio, yeah.
So there's all of that built into it. And it's just, I mean, you get guys like Patch Culverson, who is a data genius over at Big Loud, right? Came from the pop label world. And his brain, I always say he's as brilliant as Seth England is, just different, you know?
Yeah.
I've heard you talk him up before about his genius.
He is.
That's
He's
cool.
he's incredibly smart and in an incredibly useful way, you know, because there's a lot of people that are very smart, but it's in like strange ways which don't have general resources.
They could like memorize baseball cards. Or
Yeah, whatever. But what Patch does extremely well allows folks to make money, you know?
Again, yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, it's all about making money.
Yeah.
And I mean, Patch and Seth know that better than anybody. at Big
Absolutely.
Loud. That's why they're so successful. But it's
about music a little bit, hopefully, right?
No,
a little bit,
absolutely.
yeah.
Of course.
Now
They
when-
still lead with their heart.
Yeah.
You know?
Now, well, you know, going to that, now I think the new picking radio singles is picking what songs to release to DSPs first.
Yeah.
What do you think is going to work? Like,
Yep.
what do you think is the best? I think that's the new picking radio singles now.
Yeah.
And I guess, you know, like with an artist 20, 30 years ago, the label would do all the developing. Now that's on the publisher and the management company to do all the
Yes.
developing. So basically, the
What
label
does
takes
that
the
mean,
finished
developing?
product.
Artist development.
Yeah, like writing as many songs. The more songs you write, the better hopefully you get at it, and the
Yeah.
better songs come out of it. And trying to help them which path to go to in turn. Like, do you want to go towards this sonic sound because we think this would be better for you, or do you want to go in this direction? You know, just to give you a warning, if you go this direction, this will happen, or you know, like conversations like that that publishers do have with singer-songwriters who don't have a record deal yet.
Yeah. So it's like that's the artist development deals that you hear people signing. That's what they're kind of doing. You're figuring out what your look is. You're figuring out what your sound
Yeah,
is.
your brand. What do you want to say? Who are your fans? Like,
Yep.
what do you want your fans to look like at your shows?
Get you media trained so when you're telling the same story that you have, you're telling it in a way where nobody's upset, you know? It's all part of that too.
And a lot of people who move to town, I don't think about that stuff.
No.
They're just like, man, I love singing. I love writing songs. I just want to do this.
Yeah.
I wish it was that easy. It's not, unfortunately.
Yeah, we talk about that all the time. I'm like, talent. The crazy part of this town is there's so many talented people that talent's like 20% of it.
Talent, you got to meet the right people.
Yeah.
You got to work your ass off.
Have great songs, whether you wrote them or someone else wrote them.
You got to be a
and
good
get 'em
networker. You got to be
Very
willing to go
much.
out and meet people. You got to be passionate as hell.
likable.
Yeah, you know, talent's 1/4 or 1/5 of the equation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. I totally agree with that.
I can't tell if I'm overwhelmed or incredibly inspired right now. You know,
Well, it is overwhelming when you think about it. And like, man, I remember the first time I heard things like, oh, they're using all of this data to pick a single. I'm like, man, that kind of takes the heart out of it. But it doesn't. It just gives you another point of reference where you're like, is my ear right on this and this is great?
Exactly. Yep.
Or is it not? You know?
And it's okay to be proven wrong about
Yeah.
stuff, or hopefully be proven right. We think this way about the song. We're going to release it to DSPs on this
Yep.
date, and hopefully, like, people agree with us.
Yeah.
And if the song takes off, you're like, cool, we're vindicated. You
Yeah.
know?
But at the same time, and it's called opinion for a reason. So if I think a song's great, it doesn't mean it's great for everyone, but man, it touches me.
Yeah.
You know, and as a fan, that's what you need. But as a company that's pushing a song to streaming and deciding how much money to spend to send it to radio or not, it is data points.
Because at the end of the day, like, labels have to pay their promo staff.
Yeah.
They have to pay their A&R staff. They
Yeah.
have to, you know, I mean, all these artists that tour have to pay their band
Yep.
and their managers. And it affects so many people when you think about it, you know, how well these songs do.
Yep.
So,
I absolutely agree with that. I love the publishing side too. One of my favorite things is what they call demo jail, which if you're listening and you don't know what demo jail is, it's hearing songs oftentimes by the songwriter or even the artist, like kind of a torn down version, or maybe they change it
or a
when
work
they're
tape, or
Yes.
even like work tape jail, which isn't a thing, but
Yes. Yeah, but that is like, so you will
It's
hear
called jail because they're forcing you to listen. Hey, you're hanging out on the bus and you're drinking a beer and like
Yeah.
you're listening to whatever, and they're like, "Hey, I got this new song. I'm gonna throw it on." And you're like, "All right, here we go." Cool.
But people like me that haven't been in the industry super long and just love songs, I'm like, Demo Jail is my favorite.
I love Demo Jail.
Yeah.
Same. I'm like, Luke, play that new tune you wrote with
Oklahoma.
Post or
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, it's that's one for me, coming from just loving music to getting to kind of be in this industry world that I love. And like you talk about with Randy Montana's version of Where the Wild Things Are.
Okay, I'd love to tell that story real quick. So we had a Dropbox link of Randy Montana like demos that he'd written and that no one was cutting, and it would be like 3 a.m. We're like, put that Randy shit on, hell yeah. And that was one of the songs, was Where the Wild Things Are, and it's just kind of that Dropbox link had just floated in the Luke Combs band camp, because there's some incredible songs. And that another one was Boys.
So good.
That Muscadine cut.
Yeah.
That's a really killer song. But Where the Wild Things was another one, and Luke was kind of like, man, no one's cutting that for years, and he just eventually was like, fuck it, I'll cut it,
Yeah.
And which is, as a guy that's worked for Luke for a long time, he's never cut anything really. You know? It's
That's
like-
truly outside.
Yeah.
That's not Fast Car. That was already hit by another artist 30
Right.
And
years
everything
ago.
else is it's like all of his singles that he was a writer on, because he's a songwriter first and foremost more than anything else.
Man, that was the first song I gravitated to when I saw the track listing and everything. I'm like, oh, Luke didn't write this at all, and it's not a cover. What is
Right.
this song? It's
Yeah.
got to be good for Luke to cut an outside
Yeah.
song, and it was.
It's just different too.
It
and
is.
I love it just goes right into a guitar solo instead of like the second chorus or whatever,
I love songs that do that you think it's going to do one thing and it does not do what you think it's going to do. I love songs like that.
Me too. That's one of the things that I love about rock music from when I was younger, like the grunge rock and post grunge area, is like you never know when the guitar is going to kick in and it's going to sound different, and it just makes the song super interesting. So when a song isn't the classic method,
Verse, chorus,
Yes.
bridge, or we'll repeat the chorus and end the
Yes.
song. Yeah.
when it's not that, it really like, I don't even notice why it's doing it until I pay attention on the outside of it. I'm like, oh, that's not structured the same way. That's why it like intrigued my mind. Or when you hear a key change, or when you hear,
I love key changes.
Same. I think they can be so powerful.
The
if done
Dig Down in
properly.
Dallas mod.
Oh.
is class. So it's one of my favorite mods of all time.
Well, that was Alex Maxwell who produced that track. Was like, we got to do the key change here.
I love a good key change. My
Me
dad
too.
hates key changes.
Really?
If like for whatever reason it bothered him.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it was unexpected. That's why I like it. Like it's the whole point,
When that's a Reed from over at Big Loud does digital over there, he had a playlist that was all key changes.
I would love that.
I can get it for sure. I'll text Reed for it. It's on Spotify. But he had like all of them on there, and I was like, well, Dick Down in Dallas is a key change. He's like, on the playlist, But I love that too. And that's one of the reasons why that new Ella song that she has, that she's doing with Riley, that has that like old timey cadence, it just doesn't sound like what you're used to hearing now. And that Nate Frederick song, The Dreamers, kind of in that same world, which we used to play on the radio. So
Yep.
it sounds very similar, style wise.
I love when you text me, you're like, I love this. I don't know why. Explain it to me musically. I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm
Because
like-
it's Queens of the Stone Age. It's the guitar riff school. And you're like, okay,
Okay,
cool.
cool. I'm like, this guitar, what is this? How are we doing this? Because I don't know.
Yep.
I'm like, I love this style of guitar on a song. And he's like, oh, that's this. And I'm like, I'm not going to remember any of that, but thank you.
Now, when I was a kid, I would listen to like Neil McCoy and Billy's Got His Beer Goggles On. And I'm
Yeah.
like, what is that instrument that I keep hearing throughout the song? I don't know what it is, but I love it.
Yeah.
Because it makes the track sound cool and like nothing else.
Mm-hmm.
That's the stuff I look for in songs, or a great melody, or just like
Yes.
changing it up and stuff like that. So
The melody is what catches me, and then if the lyrics are good enough, it'll keep me there forever.
Yeah.
Because I have that thing where I just murder songs by listening to them on repeat.
I'm not gonna nitpick lyrics. That's just not what I
Yeah.
do. Like if the lyric flat out does not make sense, or like the rhyme sequence is like, not good to me,
Yeah.
I'll say something.
Yeah.
But I'm not gonna just live and die off every single word or line in a song. If it's got a great melody, great hook, great idea, you have me.
Yeah.
I love a lyric that has like, it's got some word in it that just feels really out of place. And it was like, there's just like that Blake Shelton doing what you like with the watermelon candles or something. I was
Yeah.
like, for whatever reason, that I was always, that's so weird. But now, like 10 years after that song came out, I'm like, I could still hum it in my head. Like it
Yeah.
just works.
It makes the song.
Yeah.
That's the line from that song I remember the most is the watermelon.
Candles upstairs, letting them burn.
Watermelon, yeah.
I just think when you're a consumer, it's what makes it stand out. And that's for an artist. What I always say, the most famous artists in the genre you can dress as for Halloween. But what of that person makes them so you can,
Yep.
And I love that part. And then I also love the part where it's like, what of that song makes you want to listen to it on repeat? Whether it's Isbell and he sneaks in a word that you're like, how the heck did he rhyme that with anything? Or like make it sound proper. Or whether it's some connotation in an Eminem song where he's making it sound like it should fit there, even though the word, historically how it was pronounced doesn't. Just those things that make it slightly different is what makes me come back to it personally.
Is it fun to sing along to is another thing. I mean, how fun is it to just crank in your car and sing along to something?
Yeah.
If you can do that really well, you're probably going to have a hit.
Yeah.
So
I remember playing Thick Thighs on the radio by Priscilla. And Kurt was like, this song's not like exactly done. And I'm like, but it's sick, And that was before Priscilla like blew up. And then it happened right after that. And that's what Kurt always said. Like, you can kind of see it before it's all done. It's because I don't know if it's done or not. I just know if it's good or if there's something there that makes it stand out. That's the thing that I think I'm like decent at,
There are songs we have in our catalog. So, I've been trying to dig into the catalog, and there's a good 15 of them where I just have on repeat in my car, like through my aux put.
Yeah.
And I forget that these songs are not released because I'm like singing every word to it. I'm like, oh man, that's right. The song's not released. I'm trying to get it cut.
So if you're an artist, hit up Chris. He's got all the good tunes.
It's got the hits.
I'll take a third of your, however that works.
That's not how it works at all.
Yeah, not at all.
Dang.
There's a great Brett song called "Hold Me Back," which is just I would like bet part of my salary it's going to be a hit, but there's no bites on it yet. So
Is that who did he write that with? Do you know?
he wrote it with Mark Irwin and Kat Higgins.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because there's a song, Shane McAnally has that songwriter album he put out on Spotify, I think in like 2014 or 15. I want to hold you, but I don't want to hold you back is like one of the lines in it. And that album is one where some of those songs are already hits and others are not cut. But Shane has them out on Spotify, and I've listened to them for so many years that I think they're hits in my head. I'm like, wait, who cut this one? And I was like, oh, no one? Oh.
I'm listening to these Brett demos, and I'm like, man, like this would be awesome to have this out there for people to hear because his demos are like legendary.
Well, that's how Hicks Tape started. They were in meetings like figuring out what songs Hardy was going to cut. And they were like, you just have so many. We need to like figure out how to get more of these out to the world. We should just like make a mixtape or something. And he's like, well, if it was me and my buddies, it'd be a Hicks Tape. And that's how Hicks Tape started, the original Hicks Tape with all Hardy songs.
How many
on
has
the
he
record.
had now? He's had a few of those already.
Yeah, that's the third Hicks Tape. But I mean, the last one was just Diffie songs. And the second one was some Hardy songs, but not all Hardy songs. But that first one, Hardy was on every track in terms of as a writer. So it was just like kind of getting his catalog out more.
It's just first world problems that Hardy has. He's such a monster talent.
Such a smash writer. It's funny too. There are so many songs that kind of float around. So you'll hear like Hardy songs that maybe aren't even good, but they're good in a certain way where like someone will have the demo of and play you, Or you'll hear silly demos, like stuff that's slightly dirty or things like that,
Hardy is so good.
His rap is good too. Yeah.
He's so good because he has this style for him as an artist, but he's
Yes.
able to put on so many hats and write for other people.
Yes.
A lot like what David Lee Murphy used to do.
Yeah.
But even like to a greater extent. Because
Yeah.
I mean, like Hardy wrote Kenny Jesse's latest #1, "Take Her Home." Like Hardy would never sing that to me in a million years, but
Right.
it works for Kenny, and it works for radio. But for Hardy, he sings songs like Truck Bed and Rockstar and all these other cool songs that nobody else can really sing in the country format but him.
Yep.
So
Yeah, it was great just getting to be around him enough to kind of pick up some of that. And he is literally every person that you think your buddy would be. He just happens to be incredibly, incredibly talented at certain things, you know? Really good dude. That's one of the people that I met that I was most, the Bushlight Show.
oh, there it is.
One of the people that I met that I was most like, he's just a regular dude who's a good person, loves his freaking wife, loves making music, and was good to literally everyone around him, including all the radio people.
Fans?
I remember the radio team being like, Hardy will do almost anything we ask him. If he can do it, he'll do it because he gets it. He knows that that's an important part of it.
Fans love people, or they love artists that they feel the closest to, and usually that's because of how relatable they are. They're just a regular dude. Like Luke is just a regular dude.
Yeah.
That became a superstar.
Yeah.
And every single fan can relate to him.
Yep.
You know, so
It's super cool getting to see those and getting to see folks like come up, like Bailey. Like, dude, getting to see Bailey play his first show when he was like 19, I guess, and being like, oh yeah, he cool. And Austin Sean, his producer, was playing guitar for him
At one of your events, right?
at Live Oak. Yeah, like crazy.
Van Bailey at Live Oak. It's too bad I missed that.
Yeah, it was nuts. But honestly, like on that round, he was supposed to have, I think, Nate Smith on that round with him, and it was supposed to be him, Nate Smith, and then 2 other folks. And Nate was like, "Can I play with Rob?" And I think it was Janakis, maybe, which was a great round too. But it's just funny that Bailey's the biggest star of all of those now.
I just saw Janakis at Red Door.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just
Dude,
another,
I love Andrew.
Great voice.
Yeah, just another like running into people at Red Door kind of
Yeah.
night. So
We don't go out to Red Door as much as we used to, but just because with 12 events a month in town right now,
you guys are
it's-
gone all the time.
Well, yeah, plus festivals, it's a lot. But what a blessing of a way to do it, I
Yeah.
guess.
Well, long overdue for sure.
Yeah.
So it's just all this stuff is incredible. I've always wanted to know all this stuff, and it's like cool to get to pick your brain about it a little bit. And Brett is just such a monster talent, also.
Yeah. I'd love to be in that demo jail.
I played a gig with Brett one time, and it was at the Ryman, and for like corporate thing, it was like
Oh, the corporate shows, yeah.
yeah, it was like this show for millionaires under 40 or something. It was like
Sounds right.
Yeah, sounds like a Brett James. So
I'm
corporate-
neither of those.
yeah, true. And it was like Wyatt, Durrett, and Brett, and I'm blanking on what's the guy's name from Sugarland. Oh my god,
Christian Bush.
Christian Bush.
Yeah.
And we played, and I just played dobro and just jammed with them. Like I didn't like know what songs they were gonna play. Dude, Brett is a monster.
He is incredible live. And
yeah, what a voice.
when he plays those shows, I think he just he has to play the same hits that, because that's what people want to hear.
Yeah.
Like When the Sun Goes Down, Jesus Take the Wheel, Who I Am, Bottoms Up, just play the hits as they say in radio. But
yeah.
Brett's I think he's got 27, 28 number one hits.
So crazy.
And then he's got like twice as many top 10 or top 20 songs too. And just so.
And he's just such a good singer, man. He's a great
Yeah.
musician. There's some guys out there, and there's a lot of super talented. Like Chris Stefano is another one of those guys.
Oh, yeah. Absurd.
Dude, you hear that guy sing? I'm like,
How isn't he super famous? Yeah.
what?
Yep.
He's
And-
famous to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
and he
Us-
plays great too, and it makes me want to go practice. I'm like, I'm going to learn how to sing now. That dude's a monster talent too.
Absolutely. It's super cool in town because, again, like those folks will travel, but not often, and you don't see them headlining your local shed or even your local clubs. It's specific gigs that they'll play, when they go out of town. So it's just, we are so lucky to be in Nashville, Tennessee and get to catch glimpses of those brilliant, brilliant minds and brilliant songwriters who, like you said, have amazing voices themselves.
Yeah. My favorite gigs, obviously I love going to a place like Nissan or a place like
Yeah.
Bridgestone, but my favorite shows to go to are the Listening Room
Yeah.
or Bluebird Cafe
Yeah.
or even going down to Live Oak. Like those are my favorite shows to attend.
It's just so pure. That's music how music was originally created. It feels like, you know.
Yeah, and there's we talked about this the other day we're talking about even like doing radio shows. It's cool because there's no bullshit. It's just the guitar and the voice and the song.
Yeah.
So
I love getting to see the intricacies too of the artist or the writer, you know, like Craig Wiseman.
Oh yeah.
If you ask Craig Wiseman to play something, he won't play it on purpose, just to like, and he makes up a reason. So he was popped up and played one of our events, and I asked him to play one on purpose, knowing that was the case of what happens, just to like have him do his bit where he talks about, oh yeah, I don't remember the second chorus of that one, you know. So
4D chess you were playing with him. Yeah.
Yeah, it just, you know, it makes everyone kind of laugh that knows that he does that. You know?
I do that listening room all the time. Like, I mean, I've seen Adam Craig play there 3 times.
yeah.
I'm
Dude,
like,
what
if
a
you don't
voice.
do Just a Phase, I'm like leaving. I'm not coming if you don't do that song. So
Yeah. I love him, and I love him when he plays with Jordan Walker, because Jordan's a hoot, man.
I think normally you play 6 songs. If it's 3 people on there with Jordan there, you'll probably play 3 or 4 because there's so much talking going on.
Yeah.
We tried talking Jordan into doing a podcast here in the Raise Rowdy family, but he's too busy right now.
You know who else is really good that I did a show with? I played dobro with also recently at the listening room was I'm blanking on. He had a artist career which is great, and he plays the shit out of the guitar, and he's a writer on In Color.
Oh, James Otto.
James Otto. God, that guy can sing.
Yeah.
He's so good.
Have you ever heard his first album? If you haven't, listen to it.
Yeah, we gotta do a deep dive into that. But getting to play with him, and he's awesome. Like, he's such a cool guy. I love that. That was a real treat for me.
Who are some of your favorite writers that used to be artists that you think could have been bigger? Like, should have
been bigger,
a
man.
superstar?
There's like a laundry list of them.
know.
Like, you know,
I have some too.
I know Nick's answer, but
Yeah.
I mean, just Matt Jenkins. I wish would have worked as an artist.
Yeah.
His voice is amazing.
Yeah.
And obviously such a great songwriter.
Yep.
Jesse Alexander too.
Yeah.
I loved her. Like, I loved her music when she had a record deal.
Yeah.
As well. Brett, obviously.
Yeah.
Brett's songs were great when he had a record deal. There's just so many of them. And I'm learning a lot of the young writers in town that are in their 20s. They don't even know that people like Matt Jenkins had a record deal.
Yeah.
Because I had a Matt Jenkins advanced copy I got from Combustion, whereas I came on the Castle on it and Bad As I Want To. And I had it on my desk, and a writer came in after writing with like somebody. It's like, man, I didn't know Matt had a record deal. He's wearing a cowboy hat and everything. I'm like, yeah, man. There's a lot of writers out there. Like
There
Neil
are.
Thrasher
Yeah.
had a record deal.
Yeah.
Jim Collins had a record deal.
Yep.
Mark Nessler had a record deal. Like, the list goes on and on and on. So
It's crazy, but it's also great that they can have that second career, you know? Like, Josh Thompson's one of my faves, and he had some commercial success, but then writing smashes. David Lee Murphy's another
Yep.
one, had his own success. Jonathan Singleton, like one of my
I
favorites.
love Jonathan Singleton's
Same.
record deal days.
Man, when he was in the Grove, I loved it. And his album, The Getaway, which now isn't even on Spotify, RIP, I think they took it down. That record, I probably listened to more than anyone has.
Is that the one that has the Good Guys on it? Is that the same
No.
album, or is that another one?
That was a different one.
Okay.
That record was a concept record about like white trash love. And it was the ups and downs of love, you know? And I couldn't stop listening to it. I'm going to have to see if Singleton has it on a Dropbox somewhere and can send it to me. Because it used to be on Spotify, not Apple. And so I would listen to it all the time, and I'd send it to people. And now it's gone. It's off there.
Oh, man.
Yeah. And then Randy Montana.
Randy, yeah.
Randy's stuff,
Damn,
that
bro.
record deal stuff.
Ain't
so
Much Left
fire.
of Lovin' You is one of my all-time favorite songs.
Yep. And
put me in a box, girl. Put me in a box. All those.
Love
things,
Has
yeah.
1,000 Faces.
Yeah.
Yep. Cowboy. Like a cowboy. It just smashes. But
The music
blessings.
industry is so weird. I don't get it sometimes. Sometimes I'm like, this is all made up. You know, I'm like, this person's not famous. What?
John Pierce, another one at Universal.
Yeah.
His only single was called "I'd Still Have You." Is a great song, and I mean, he's having all the success now. Just had a #1 hit with John Party on
Yeah.
"Your Heart or Mine," but his record deal was like mid-2000s. It took him a good 10 years to get a lot of success as a writer. I'm feeling that's like a common thread for a lot of writers out there that had the record deal where they're far enough removed from the record deal where people don't view them as, the artist that didn't work at radio. They just view them as a great writer or a great
Yeah.
writer and producer. So
And that's such a blessing too, because the artist's career is oftentimes short-lived, but you can write great songs for a long time.
Yeah, for as long as you want to, forever.
Yeah.
I'm actually curious about this too. If
I'm going to the restroom.
Okay, yeah, go ahead. So when you're kind of you work in publishing. So if I'm a songwriter and I'm talking about royalties, what is the difference between getting a song on radio like a Jelly tune or an Ashley song, or having a song like a streaming monster like, Zach Bryan and the Casey Musgraves tune or something?
I mean, for Zach, it's a whole different ballgame because, like, the way his record deal is structured and the fact that he writes pretty much all his songs himself, like 100%ers, we call them.
Yeah.
He's making a lot of money off streaming, and he streams obviously better than anybody not named Morgan Wallen in the format right now. So he's a little different than anybody else, but for like an average writer, let's say you have a song that gets 300 total million streams across all platforms,
That's
including
huge.
Spotify.
Huge hit.
Doesn't make nearly as much money as if you have a number one radio single, and that is just the sad, cold, hard truth.
I was looking at the media base the other day, and there was like it was the George Burge when his single went number one.
Yep.
And I didn't even know who that was.
George is great, one of the nicest people you'll ever meet. Too.
I'm just not, now I do, but I was like, I wonder if is it better to have like a number one on radio, even if it's not a streaming giant, compared to like a streaming.
If you're a songwriter, it sure is, absolutely. And if you're if you're George and you wrote that song too, Mind on You, yeah. If it's a number one song that spends it spent 60 weeks on the chart, I think.
Right.
That's gonna pay you a lot of money.
Yeah, I think there was like this. I remember talking to Dan Isbell when Better Together was coming out, and I'm like, damn, this piano ballad is flying up the charts. He's like, well, I don't want to fly up too fast.
Yeah, I get a lot of that nowadays. They're like, man, don't fly up too fast. I want it to stay on the chart long enough to make enough money. So, it's a good problem to have, but I completely understand. Like a song that flies to number one in 20 weeks versus one that takes 60 weeks to get number one and stays in the top 10 for a while. That's going to make you more money than the 20-weeker.
Interesting. So like the Post and Morgan song, which is just such a ridiculous smash hit in like the best way. But it's going to be off the chart because it just is going so fast, right? I mean, it'll hang at number one for a while, but
I think the number one topic around town the past couple of weeks is one, how fast will the Post and Morgan song take to get the number one? Two, how long will it stay there once it gets there?
right.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be an 8 to 10 week number one. I really don't. I think it's going to be like 5 or 6, which is still like way
It's
better
still
than
huge.
anything else almost.
Yes.
But I just think with the album coming out in August, the fact that, it's been on the chart for 7 weeks. Its entire run has been in medium to heavy airplay.
Right.
Normally when you have a song get released to radio, you slowly build research, and like it takes a while. It's like, cool, we're gonna put this right in medium airplay from the first week, and then 3 weeks later, it's for a lot of stations it's in heavy airplay. It's like, wow, So I don't think it's gonna be like a 10-week number one, but still, it's gonna spend at least a few weeks at number one once it gets there, which. Probably going to be this Friday on number one on Billboard. So, I don't know when this podcast is coming out, but I'm sure I'll be proven right or wrong by then.
Super cool to see that stuff too. Like, I was pretty close with the radio team at Big Loud, and just watching them when they were doing their push weeks, and then the data of like, okay, we probably need to back off this song, or no, we're going to push it twice as hard.
Yeah, that's a big topic with labels, because if you see a monster like the Post or Morgan song and the other Morgan song with Ernest Cowgirls,
oh yeah,
and your songs, like let's say at 8 or 9, is there any way we can slow this down so we don't have to peak when they peak? That goes on a lot.
Yeah.
With labels and in radio circles. And
Well-
push weeks get determined 4, 5, 6 weeks in advance, which
Yeah.
I think a lot of people don't realize.
Absolutely.
And labels coordinate that stuff together.
Yeah.
They sure do.
And sometimes they don't.
Sometimes they
Once in a blue moon, you'll get a label that will be like, no, we have a huge hit that deserves more weeks than one at number one. We're going to keep pushing it. We don't care. Like, once in a
Yeah.
blue moon, you'll get that. And it happened a lot 10, 15, 20, 25 years ago. Nowadays,
Right.
you kind of wait your turn.
Now, isn't there a story, and I'm going to just guesstimate this, but wasn't there like a Sammy Kershaw song that was like at number 2, and then like some radio guy like locked himself in and like
National Worker Women's Holiday. Yeah.
Is that a real story?
Yeah, it's a real story.
All right,
I heard it on Sammy. So this is like secondhand knowledge, but I remember watching GAC back in the day, and Sammy Kershaw had a song called "Tennessee Girl," I think, out at the time. It was like a comeback single, and he talked about that though, like that song. It went number 1 on the radio and records chart, number 2 on Billboard, but yeah, this one station caused it to go number 1 like the last day of the week or something, and they just like played it over and over again during the whole night, and got the number 1. It's crazy. Like that would never happen nowadays in a million years.
When I think they changed the rules because of stuff like that, where
Yes, they changed the rule because of one song.
Yeah.
In 2004.
What song was that?
It was Reba and Somebody, which had this is long before they had like major number 1 pushes like you do now. So that went from like 4 to number 1. It only got the number 2 on MediaBase. It got number 1 on Billboard. And at the end of the year, Billboard decided to change and have their entire chart be ranked on audience versus spins. It used to be spins that they were ranked on, but because of that, they're like, let's do audience. So,
do you look at consumption charts?
Yeah.
So I know that.
What's a consumption chart?
Chris, do you want to explain?
Nick.
I can explain if not.
well, you listen to radio, but consumption, people, like how many people are buying your music, streaming your music, are going to your TikTok videos and your Instagram videos and all that stuff.
Like
how much are they actually being consumed literally by your music?
Yeah.
Like, is that kind of like the difference between you throwing on a playlist and hearing, a Reba tune, or going to Reba's Spotify page and hitting play?
Yes and no. It's more like everything rolled up.
Yeah.
So it's okay, how many spins on YouTube is this getting? Add that in with radio, and there's probably ratios. I'm not sure exactly the ratios of, what's weighted the heaviest. And then it's how much are these songs getting played on the socials. So like TikTok, how many plays or how many people did they add this to their own original content? And then it's rolled up. I remember the first time talking to Mark Anderson, which was our program director at Y108, and talking about Old Town Road right when it started. And he's like, have you heard this Little Nas X song? And I was like, no. And he was like, what's consuming higher than anything else that we've seen? And then it popped.
That's
right?
like one of the biggest hits of all time.
All time. Yeah.
Is it bigger than Cruise?
Probably.
It's a little different, but yeah, I would say in terms of consumption, absolutely, it's bigger than Cruise. Yeah.
Because by the time that happened, consumption had changed. Because that popped on TikTok. That was one of the first songs that did. So
Oh, shit.
the rate of consumption with TikTok was different than just YouTube, which I guess like Cruise had YouTube, right?
It had
That was, like,
YouTube.
right when I moved to town.
This was
Yeah.
2012. The pop run was like 2013. So
Yeah.
Spotify was around. Pandora was like
Yes,
kind of
the
big
bigger
then.
thing.
You still had iTunes, but so it was like, I don't think we went to like Spotify is like this big giant thing until like 2014, 2015, like
Yeah.
that era is when it really took off. So I guess Florida Georgia Line kind of was just before that.
All right, so let's talk about Spotify. And as a publisher, how do you feel about the changes that they've made rolled up?
I hate it.
Yeah.
Can you explain it to me? Like, I don't know anything about music. Like, I'm a 5-year-old.
So basically, they're doing a bundle now for their service where on the surface, it looks like it'd be a good thing for a person that has a Spotify account to have all these other things that aren't songs bundled into this package. But the way they're doing it is, they've estimated that songwriters are going to lose like, what's the number? $150 million per year annually or something like that. So it's like, and they're already not paying songwriters and publishers enough money. So, it's already a problem before this happened. But yeah.
So I have never had Spotify.
I've always used Apple Music. I've never used Spotify either.
Same. And people send me playlists all the time. Check this out. And it's always Spotify. I'm like, but I've been told that Apple pays better.
They do, yeah.
And so I didn't do it. And then my buddy Nick from home was like, hey, not you, different Nick. Okay.
Hey, my buddy Nick right over here.
Damn, yeah,
No,
true.
had put me, he already pays for Spotify, so I'm going to add you on my family plan. I don't know if this is going to get me in trouble, but and so now I have Spotify. I don't pay for it, but so I have it. And as soon as I get it, it's like this thing comes out. And I'm like, it's worse for songwriters. But if you're an artist, is that any different for being an artist? I guess if you're a writer on the song, it's different.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a writer on the song and you're an artist, then it's still bad news. We had what did we go to? We went to this like seminar or something where like people from Warner Chappell, which we have a relationship with, Cornman Music, they handle all that kind of stuff, you know, getting all the royalties and getting all the compensation from streaming services and stuff like that. And, you know, basically they all try to explain what's going on. How do we attack it? Why is this bad? Here's how much money you could be losing, blah, 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 and stuff like that. And it's like, wow, it painted a really bleak picture because it's already hard as hell to get songs, like, to be paid enough through streaming. You know, back in the day, before, like long before iTunes even, you could make money as a songwriter off an album cut. If the album sold X amount of units and was one of the best-selling albums of the year, you could make a good, you know, a penny off just having 2 or 3 album cuts on those days are like, you can't do that anymore. Like you need radio like nowadays, unless you're just going to get, I mean, unless you own the masters and you have this song just, you know, go ballistic on streaming.
Do you think within the next 10 to 15 years we'll see songwriters get cut in on masters more? Because I hear shaking about that. Where like songwriters that are known hit makers talking about points on records with artists.
I'm sure you will. Like, I'm sure it's probably going to be a topic of conversation that grows as the years go by here.
That's my opinion.
I mean, especially if this streaming thing continues on this downward trajectory of making us money and making songwriters money. I mean, I just don't think that people that run Spotify look at it like a job, a profession. Like, you know, these writers, they come in 4 to 5 days a week, write songs. They put their blood, sweat, and tears into it. They have kids, they have families, they're trying to pay their rent or mortgage, and they just don't look at it like that, which is a shame.
It's
what are we doing to? I mean, what are our options? I guess
legal options, like sue them, take them to court, all this different, like, which is going to take so much time to.
Well, what about the consumers? What about the Joe Schmoes who are driving to the grocery store with their
buy
kids?
the song on Apple. Buy the song.
Pay for your streaming service, especially. Do not use free streaming services. Like, pay for
There's
it.
no money in that.
Use Apple.
Pay to download the songs that you love. If you love a song, go physically download it.
Yeah, buy the album.
Or buy the record on vinyl. That's why vinyl, I think, still exists and is kind of having a renaissance. Number one, it's a physical format that you can kind of take home and look at and see and be like, yeah, I have it.
I buy vinyl. I don't even have a record player.
That happens way more than you would think.
Yeah, because people want to collect them. It's like, cool, I have this album on vinyl, and they kind of almost like put it up in their, you know, other living room, kind of like a decoration. Like, this is really cool. I have this album. You know, like I have David Now, and I'm about to come alive on vinyl, and you like have it up there in your living room.
Yep. The other thing I think you'll see is like what we talked about, where if you are a hit songwriter or if you want to get the best writers in the room, you might have to split up a point on the record, you know, eventually. And then you're going to get the best songs. Hey, you want to cut the best song that we've had come through our publisher and X amount? We need 2 record points to distribute. You know,
there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of negotiating that goes on
Absolutely.
with, you know, percentages too. You know, like writer percentages.
Yep.
Not every song is going to be split evenly. If it's a 3-way, 4-way, 5-way, like, or 6-way, like whatever the case is. So.
Yep.
I have heard also about like paying guarantees up front. If a publisher has like a song that they deem is a big fat hit.
Yeah.
And maybe an artist that's not quite as big wants to cut it. Maybe the artist has to pay some royalties up front or something. I've heard of that.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's common anymore, but this was a while ago.
What about holds? Can you explain? Because I know a little bit, but I assume some of the people that listen don't. Like, what is a hold? How does a hold work? And do you think that it's a sustainable model in music?
I think it's interesting. I didn't know until maybe a few years ago, and certainly now in the past 3 months. Like, you've heard of holds, like, you know, this artist had the song on hold first, blah, blah, blah. It's like, man, is there like an actual like system to go about doing that? It's really kind of the honor system.
Yeah.
Like, you pitch a song, let's say you pitch it to somebody and they love it and they're like, don't play this for anybody else. We're going to have it on hold. So you send, or what we do is we send an email to all the parties involved, saying, hey guys, like let's say there's 3 publishers involved. It's a 3-way, and one of the publishers pitches it. It gets on hold. You like make sure you relay to everybody, hey, this song's on hold. For who? Don't play it for anybody else. And you basically just like make that, like you have something in your system like this is on hold. Don't play it for anybody else.
Yeah.
But there's no statute limitations on how long that could be on hold. It could be on hold for a week. It could be on hold for 2 years. You have no idea. So
That was my thought is like, what if there was a thing where, okay, you have this song for 6 months to cut and 6 months after cut to release, and then you start paying a royalty on it to hold it if not, and
man, you're opening up Pandora's box doing
I
that
know.
stuff.
But like you have to, again, like I'm just trying to think of other ways where the publisher and the writer can get paid on things, even if it doesn't end up working out.
That's why it's so important to know who's cutting when.
Yeah.
So you'll find out like what week or what day an artist is cutting. You'll have like a cut schedule, because if you have a song gets put on hold and that artist isn't cutting again until like, let's say next year, then like, man, like this song's just going to sit around for a year until it like has a chance to be released and get cut and put on an album. So that's a very real thing that like writers and publishers talk about. Yeah.
And also there's like kind of famous cut stories, I guess I'll call it, where like I think it was like Trace Adkins cut in color. Like he had recorded it, and then Jamie decided to put it out and under his own thing, and then
It's like Zach Brown with Chicken Fried.
I don't know the story of that.
Zach Brown had
the Lost Trailers. Okay,
Yeah.
this is a very famous story.
yeah, so they had put the song, they'd cut it, and he was like, no. So then he ended up letting them keep it on the record,
Wait,
but they
what?
weren't allowed to single it.
Who?
Zach.
So the song was... So Zach was still in Georgia at the time. He wrote the song called Chicken Fried. I don't remember, like I think he recorded it himself, like 2003, 2004, something like that. And then it got its way to the Lost Trailers and their label Sony.
That's a band. Okay.
Yeah.
That's a band, yeah. And this is before they had songs like Holler Back and all that. So they were signed to B&A. They came across a song and it got back to Zach. They wanted it. And Zach's like, you can have it. It just can't be a single because I want to release this hopefully someday to radio myself. They didn't, like new writer, nobody heard of Zach Brown. Like, screw it, we're going to release it anyway to radio. And Zach heard it on the radio, I guess, back in his hometown or like wherever he was. Or like a friend said he heard it and he like told Zach. And there was a cease and desist sent
No
to
way.
the label. Yeah. And that song, it was on radio for like 3 weeks or 4 weeks and got yanked. And they put out a song called
That's
Call
a great
Me Crazy.
story.
It's a great story, and that's part of what got Zach all the buzz in town.
Because it got everybody saying, like, who's this badass that told, like, a Joe Galante, like, no, like, I'm not letting you do this.
Yeah.
I guess the context of that is that because he was essentially a nobody then.
Yeah, he didn't make it yet. Like, no one knew who he was. He wasn't even in Nashville. But that is part of his origin story that made him the guy that made the record label not pull a song from
David
radio.
and Goliath story.
Literally. Yeah. And Zach, 2 years later, would release that song on a label that Live Nations owned. And then it got picked up later as it was climbing by Bigger Picture, which was the Craig Campbell label. And then the rest is history. And, so, I mean, it worked out for Zach. And I think it's risky if you're, an artist or a writer that hasn't made it yet.
Yeah.
To basically tell the big, label, nope, you can't do this. I want my song back. Here's a cease and desist. Like, that was unheard of back then.
Yeah.
And I've heard also artists that are writers have their song cut by other people, and they're like, no, like, this is my song. Don't cut it. And I'm not going to drop any names just out of respect, but then because of, like, some weird law, it's like, well, because your pub deals with us, that this is... there's no legal ground for you to say, like, don't record this. Yeah. Because, like, you've submitted to publication. You know what I mean?
And also, if you've put your song out before, someone else can do a version of it without even kind of asking you. You don't own any of the rights to the publishing or anything.
Yeah,
right?
it depends, if, who owns the publishing, who owns the masters, all this stuff matters. Like, when you go back to, like, 15, 20, 30 years ago, there's a lot of songs that were on radio that you can't find. And the reason for that is because the artist didn't own the masters. There were, we don't, like whoever owned the publishing, label goes under, artist loses the record deal, the song was never put on iTunes, and the album never came out, and the song just gets lost in time.
Weird.
Yeah.
Damn, that's so interesting. Okay, I think that Chris should have a podcast.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, you should have your own one where you just deep dive into that kind of stuff. Because I love whenever you pull that stuff out. I think it's so wildly interesting. It'd be maybe a niche kind of a thing, but
Niche things are what works the best.
yeah, it's kind of like murder
Literally.
podcast, but about murder on Music Row or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just I've always wanted to do a podcast, but every time I thought about doing it, I just got busier, whether it was
Yeah.
with radio. And now, I mean, if you pay attention to my Instagram stories, I'm always doing it at night, like after 8 p.m., because that's when I finally have some free time.
Yeah.
So
That's the hard part is one like that, specifically in long form podcast format, you'd have to do a lot of research.
research and like you have to come up with a theme,
Yeah.
song, you would have to come up with the branding, the logos, all the schedule stuff, and like just all the stuff that people don't realize when you have
Yep.
to start a podcast. It's like,
Yes.
cool, I just
All the stuff I make Nick do.
Well, ours are easier too because they are artist interviews. And
Kurt's the talent that just walks in. It's like,
Yeah.
where's my coffee?
White
Where's my
glove, dude.
microphone?
Yeah.
he's like, give me 4 bullet points. Yeah, I was going to talk about guitar. Yeah, no, it's one of those things where the more research you do, the more ammo you have. It's just like an interview, like you're going to do an interview, or if you're interviewing someone for a job, the more ammo you have, the better you're going to be. You don't even use half of it.
I think for some people it's different too. Like when I was in radio, I did music, so I would talk 10, 15, 20, 45 seconds at a time.
Yeah.
I didn't have to do much preparation compared to people that did talk shows.
Yeah.
Where like you literally, and I learned this in college radio, you have to plan out what you're going to talk about,
Oh,
whether
yeah.
it's bullet points or something else, or just like be prepared, because if you don't come prepared, you're going to run out of stuff to talk about after 20 minutes. And you're
Yeah.
like, oh my God, I got the rest of my show to do.
Well, and that's what I talk about with Matt. We're starting to shoot short form content. I was like, you don't have to come in knowing exactly what you're going to say, but you need your 5 bullet points, right? You need your 10 bullet points of what you want to hit on, and then you can kind of go from there.
Yeah.
But you need to know what you want to talk about and have bullet points about the points you want to make sure you hit on, and then you can do that short form content quick. Long form content, whole different story.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like video essays are like,
Yeah.
you're like literally just, your podcast is you reading this thing that you've written out about whatever.
Yes. Yeah, and
Ghost songs, or whatever.
Oh, it's funny in radio when we would like try to voice the spots or the commercials that all these local companies would buy up. They buy like 15-second spots or 30-second spots or 60-second spots. They would love to, one, help write the commercial and also come in and want to voice it. And I mean, if you buy a 60-second spot, it is 60 seconds on the nose. You can't be like 73 seconds or something and just hope it's going to work. No. You got to be like exactly 60 seconds.
well, and if it's 45 seconds, it's going to mess you up.
Yes.
You know?
Like you have to make sure it's to a T. And like there's actual software that radio stations have where you can type something out and it'll tell you like exactly how long it's going to be for you to say this. So
Robots.
Yeah.
literally.
Robots are everywhere.
Yeah. Thank you, robots.
Yes. They're going to edit this podcast for us.
We love you so much.
Yeah.
It's very interesting to hear all of the business side of things too, because I, for so long, just was a fan, just a guy going to shows that love music. So getting to be in the Raise Rowdy world opened some of those, but then getting a radio show definitely opened more. I learned so much from that. And then working at a record label, you're like, oh, that's how it works.
I mean, it's been fascinating just to see, how different radio looks at it, how different publishers look at it, how
Yeah.
different labels look at it even.
Yeah.
And with the label, having the promo staff be a part of it, having the A&R staff be a part of it.
Yep.
And then having managers involved and the artists and the songwriters. And it's like everybody thinks of it a little bit differently. I think that's what makes it great and so interesting. But at the same time, you can have kind of like conflict of interest and like maybe some disagreements on stuff because it's like, well, I know it should be, done this way. Well, actually, I think it should be done this way because I don't know about any of that stuff you have to deal with and vice versa. So
Yes, very much so.
I'm sure in a couple of years' time, we could just do this again and the scene will just be completely different.
Yeah.
Hopefully better for the songwriters.
hopefully better, hopefully not less money and more money.
It's definitely challenging. I've had friends, of course, being in this town that are songwriters that have 25 or 30 cuts, and
No radio singles, maybe.
if there's one or no radio singles, they're still not looked at like it's a successful year, which is crazy.
Because, I mean, there are songs that even go to radio. If they die at 56 or something on the Billboard Country Airplay chart and spend 5 weeks on there, that's not really going to make you any money.
Right.
And it's a shame that you could have 20, 25 cuts over a 3-year deal. Let's say you could be in debt because you haven't had a radio single, or you haven't had something just go ballistic on streaming. And it's like, it sucks.
Yeah.
And like all these people have talent, and they have talent. And what I've heard from other people is that like a writer will have a publishing deal. Let's say they have all those cuts, nothing goes to radio. They don't get renewed, but that publisher knows they're great, and they're going to call up other people like, look, like, can you help us like sign this, writer, because they're so great like that. I mean, that's happened a lot from what I can understand.
I mean, it makes sense, especially with personal relationships, and you see that person's grinding, and they're talented. And I mean, what's working on radio, if that's what you're pushing for, is changing, and it changes often. If you listen to country music in 2012 and you listen to it now, it's not the same. There's things that are the same, but there's a lot of things that are different too.
And it's different for everybody, I think. I mean, you might be successful in 6 months. You might be successful in 10 years.
Yeah.
Everybody's path is different. Like, you might have to go through a decade of just grinding and like work harder than other people had to. That's just the way life is, really. Like, I mean, it's not fair, but
12 years in a 10-year town.
It's so true though. It's what's your style, and is that working in the thing?
Yeah.
Like if you're writing stuff that sounds super traditional and traditional country isn't working right now, then of course that's not going to work. But when Zach Top hits radio, and if that ends up working, and then there's more traditional stuff that comes on mainstream radio behind it that works, then maybe all those traditional songs you've been writing for the last 5 years start getting, more ears on them, and possibly get more cuts, possibly get airplay on radio.
I think it's fascinating with guys like Luke Combs and guys like that are singing 90s country right now, like Zach Top.
Yeah.
There's a lot of songs and catalogs, excuse me, where, they didn't work 10 years ago or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Now they work. It's like, wow, we have all these great songs that didn't fit anybody, but now that guys like Zach Top are, like doing good at radio, and Luke obviously sounding like 2000s country. All these songs now can get a chance, and like I think you're seeing a lot more of that now, because it is like you have a song that might not work now, but it might work 5 years from now, or maybe that artist hasn't come along yet that will really do this song justice and want to cut it. So
yeah. I think that's one of the funnest parts of the thing, in my opinion.
Yeah, I've been in
fun,
town long enough to see that some trends come back and stuff like that. Stuff cycled in and cycle out. It's cool.
I mean, 10 years ago, it was all about bro country.
Baby You a Song.
Yeah.
Yeah, and all the songs that kind of sounded like, Florida Georgia Line and all that stuff. And now it's like there's a place for a Zach Top on country radio. Yeah. There's a place for a Carly Pierce on country radio, and Luke Combs and Morgan Wallen and Bailey Zimmerman and Megan Maroney. Like, I had this conversation with a publisher recently. It's like looking down every single like roster of every label in town. As much as I love country music 20 years ago, a lot of it, like, you could pitch songs to, Tim McGraw, if he didn't cut it, then just like go down the list and it would probably fit like most people. Now everybody has such a unique style to them, like a Bailey, a Luke, a Laney, a Morgan. And it's like, man, like everybody has such a unique style. It's almost like if you're writing for this certain artist and they don't cut it or they pass on it, damn, it doesn't really work for anybody else because it can't really fit anybody else.
Yeah. I could think even like musically, like specifically with different, instrumentations or harmonies and different things that like Luke wouldn't cut that because it doesn't, it's like the Bulletproof. It's like, such a rock tune. It's like that would definitely not fit like Carly Pierce, for example, or something. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's just like,
I'd be cool to hear Carly sing.
Oh yeah, I mean she can sing anything, no doubt. But
Very true.
It wouldn't match her brand. I would say, which is a big part of being an artist, right?
Yeah,
it's having your own thing. Well, it's been great having you on, and I'd like to end on a high note if we can, since we kind of talked about Spotify and all this stuff like that. If you want to share any success stories in the publishing world, like signing anyone or like getting stuff cut or like that, some fun stuff to end on?
We're hopeful to get a cut that was a song that we pitched like a month that was pitched a month into the job that hopefully gets cut. Could be really exciting.
Was that your first hold?
It'd be first hold, first cut, first anything.
Yeah,
so it was
cool.
like it's a long way from seeing the finish line, but it was completely unexpected. And like I've learned over the past 5 to 10 years that like when you least expect it, stuff's gonna happen.
Yeah.
And even the job I got right now is the one I least expected to get, and I was able to be blessed enough to get it. But in terms of writers, we signed Trent Wayne, who
Love
is
Trent.
a great top liner. There's not a single bad thing to say about Trent Wayne. He's
What do you mean by top liner?
so he focuses on lyrics and idea and melody and that kind of thing, versus like a track guy or a producer that will actually do the physical track that day. I mean, they can also help out with the song in terms of lyrics and melody and stuff like that. But like Trent's a true top liner where like he kind of drives the show. Yes. So we just signed him officially a couple weeks ago. Really excited about that. Hope like we might have some stuff with him in terms of cuts soon. Again, don't know for sure yet, but hopefully. And then we're in the process of signing another guy that's not quite there yet, so I can't talk about it.
Yeah, that's
Totally
fine. Yeah, we're
understand.
no pressure here. I just want to hear some good news.
Oh,
You
we
know-
signed Chris August too, which was a month or two before I got hired. But Chris is great as well, and he can do anything. He can top line. He can play the producer that day, so he's awesome. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
amazing.
And you guys got a good staff over there. Nick
Maybe
was-
we'll have to do a Cornman takeover.
I would
Ooh.
love to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, do that.
Yeah.
Get Graham on there. Get everyone out there. It'd be awesome.
I would love to. I mean, I would love to do that. Yeah. Get
Well-
Brett up there, Lydia, Bundy, Graham.
Heavy metal. Heavy. Yeah.
Graham's the busiest dude in Nashville right now. He is
Yeah.
everywhere, having to do all these shows and all these interviews and writing 4 or 5 days a week still. So
He's done 2 of the Whiskey Jam stages with us, so I've gotten to hang out with him. And we were on the same flight back, so it was fun to we sat next to each other on the Southwest flight and had some beers and got to shoot the shit. I love him. He's talented. He's super talented.
yeah, he's great. He's gonna go to radio hopefully soon. Fingers crossed.
I kind of got into his music through your playlist, Nick. Nick
Yeah.
has that Raised Rowdy New Country, and I just go for runs and listen to new stuff. Nick's my A&R guy, and I'm like, man, this like Bayou Boy shit is like, this shit feels good to run to. I'm like, who is this? Oh, it's a Graham. Oh, cool, yeah, hell yeah.
I went out not this Mother's Day, but last Mother's Day. He was doing some of his first shows on the road, and it was running through Pittsburgh, and we chatted about it. And I went on the road with him and helped him drive. And when we were in Pittsburgh, he crashed at my buddy's house. We crashed there, and
Not in the car, but like slept there.
actually like a room, yeah.
like
Not crashed the car, yeah.
Yeah, but it was super cool getting to have that moment with him. And when he signed his record deal at Sony, he was like, man, you're gonna have to go out on the road with me another. And I was like, I can't go out on the road with you. And he's like, just one weekend. I'm like, oh yeah, I can do that. Yeah. But it's so great to watch his success.
it's
man.
like I've been asked to go on a bus run before, and I'm like, how long do I have to be there? No.
Yeah.
Oh, you got to do it once, man.
It's fun.
I'll do it once if it's like a weekend.
Yeah.
I'm not staying like 2 weeks on the road
No,
or something
no,
like that. That's not happening. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean,
Nice
Yeah.
little 3-4
Y'all are
day
soft, bro.
run. You're right.
I am 100%. I'm going
Happily
to own up
soft.
to it.
Yeah.
Yes. There we go.
Yeah, I remember when I went on the road with trailers for that weekend. They were like,
That's different. Yeah.
they were like, do you have the inkling to do that now? And I'm like, no. Yeah.
You come out with us, it's a little different.
Yeah, I'm
You know,
sure.
Not as wild.
I'll be on the tech bus,
Yeah, bus 4.
and I won't remember much of it.
Yeah.
Hey, how was Buffalo when you guys picked the literal worst weekend to go up there for
It was
show?
well, you can ask Aaron Tannenbaum, our Raised Rowdy podcast alumni, about that. The crowd was great. I will say that it's an older stadium, and it's not like SoFi, where we played and we had hot water in LA, which is great. And in Buffalo, I'm taking a shower. It's freezing. I'm like, well, maybe, I'm standing there butt naked in this gym locker room shower. I'm going to each tap. I'm turning them all on, trying to get the water flowing.
Wait, which locker room did you go into?
We were in the visiting locker room. Yeah. And so I text a buddy of mine who plays for the Miami Dolphins. I'm like, Blake, I don't know how you guys deal with this in this visiting. Do you guys have hot water? He goes, fuck no, man. We never have any hot water when we play in Buffalo. Well, not his favorite place to play, obviously. Division rivals.
Meanwhile, when the Bills played in Miami in September,
there's brutal sun.
they designed the stadium to have the visiting team on the sunshine part of
Anyway,
the field.
all right, guys. Thanks for joining. Yeah, it's true though. But I'm not playing any football. I'm just trying to get a warm shower. I was cold that entire weekend, man. Freezing.
It was like 68, 70 the next weekend. It was
Yeah.
like,
So
why
loud.
why did it have to be
I'm
that
sure,
weekend?
man. It's like booking all these NFL stadiums is not easy.
No.
No,
There's
I can't.
only a certain narrow period where there's no games, and then you've got
Or nothing going on, too,
Yeah,
because they
it's-
use the stadiums for other things.
yeah, exactly. And there's more artists that are able to do stadiums, I think, than there used to be. Or it's like
The genre's
Kenny,
bigger.
yeah,
Yeah.
Kenny, and now Zach's doing stadiums, and
Morgan.
Luke, Morgan, Blake could probably do
Country
stadiums.
artists used to not do stadiums except for like Garth, and that'd be
Yeah.
it. Or the George Strait.
Yeah,
you
when he
know,
was at his
yeah,
biggest.
the George Strait Festival or whatever.
Yeah.
He's as big as now, right? He just did that show.
110,000
Yeah,
something.
crazy.
I was like, to have that many people in one venue for a concert, it just blows my mind.
Absurd.
We
Yes.
had 80 at one show at Penn State.
Yeah, it's crazy. Beaver
Like-
Stadium's so big.
Like, are you used to it to just get on stage and look at 80,000 people staring back at you, or staring at Luke, or staring at you while
Yeah,
you know?
I wouldn't say I'm used to it, but it doesn't rattle me. It did when I first time playing CMA Fest at Nissan was our first like stadium experience. It was like, oh fuck, especially in Nashville because it's like all your peers are there, all the other steel guitar players there, all the fiddle players are there, and all the guitar players and all the other artists and publishers and it's like all the people that know music are there, and they've got their magnifying glasses and they're judging you. But then you go out there and you start playing. You're like, I got this shit, and then you rock it.
Get the muscle memory
Now
back.
it's just kind of like, all right, yeah, let's do another show. You go out and it's the best 2 hours of your day, but it's not like, it's not terrifying. It's fun. It's exciting. It's the reason you get out of the bed. It's the reason I've been practicing my entire life, to be able to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Very
So-
few people get to do that, and it's just cool to go to those kind of shows. And
Yeah.
because like you hear the radio and you like now working in the music industry, seeing everything behind the scenes, but like you have to go to enough of those shows just to like experience like, oh wow, this is why country music and this is why the music industry and radio exist, like
Yeah.
all of it for this moment, and hearing these people like sing back this song.
Oh, it's incredible.
Yeah.
It's we wear these in-ear monitors that are like headphones that are built for my ears, my specific ear canal. So it protects my hearing on stage and allows me to hear what I'm doing. But sometimes I can't hear the crowd as much. And our monitor guy, Zeus, who's the literal best monitor engineer in the world, will balance the crowd ambient noise in certain spots. But sometimes I pull my ears out and just hear what it sounds like if I'm not playing. And it's just it's insane. Like Luke will be singing like a verse of Fast Car and I'm not playing it. I pop out and it's just everyone's just going crazy. It's like the verse, it's like it's one of the I wish there was some like Apple thing where I could like plug my brain into it and record it and then let y'all see what it's like to be on stage with those guys.
Yeah.
Cuz it's a trip, man. It's
like an
one of the
actual
coolest.
iPhone where like it's actually in your eye.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. I thought about
Yes.
getting those like Ray-Ban sunglasses and that record, but I'm just a Blue Otter guy. So
Same. I almost lost him at the listening room last week, and I left him
Oh.
there. And I got the Red Door with Benji, who works at Warner Chapel, and
Yep.
I'm like, damn it! I'm like, I left these sunglasses at. And he's like, oh, it's fine. He's like, how much were they? Like $20. I'm like, $200. He's like, you got to go back.
Yeah. Worth the Uber back.
Well, bud, it's been awesome having you on here. I could ask you 100 million more questions, but we'll have to catch up another time, I think.
Yeah, and then we can talk about all the stuff we can't talk about on the pod too.
Yeah.
Yeah, all the stuff that is behind closed doors.
All the secret stuff.
Yeah, like
Is
the
it-
Illuminati.
Yeah, Illuminati.
Who built the
Spotify.
pyramids? Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, buddy. Well, and I don't want to take up any more of your time. It's already been a few hours, probably. So, but dude, always great to see you, man.
Yeah,
We'll
You
have to-
thanks
too,
for jumping
absolutely.
on, man.
Thanks
We
for having me,
appreciate it.
guys.
Next time we'll do a live pod from Hunters, or what's that? Hawkers. I meant
Hawkers,
Yeah.
Hunter.
Get them wangs.
I was like, we're going to Hunter Phelps's place.
Yeah,
What
yeah.
are we doing right now?
No, Hawkers, and go get some food.
Absolutely.
But make sure you follow Chris if you enjoy fun statistics about radio and just to watch the fun that's happening in his life now that he's in Nashville, Tennessee.
Or just random stuff I share that I think
Yeah.
is kind of funny, and I'll post on my Instagram story.
Yes.
So stuff like that too. But yeah,
But man, like Kurt said, thanks for jumping on this.
absolutely.
And
Thanks for having me, guys.
It's been good to get to know you since you've been coming to town, and welcome to Nashville full time, man.
Thank you. Can't
Congrats,
wait. And
man.
yeah, thanks.
All right. Well, I'm Nicky T,
I'm Kurt Ozan.
and we'll see you in the front row.